So we are here at the YouTube Flip. This is closing day. I'm going to start finally talking about what's been going on with the YouTube Flip. But first, we're actually going to interview a lender here and learn a lot of cool things of not only about loans, and that door is locked, but how I finance this flip with zero money down. Today, we're talking about real estate loans, and because it's a little windy, I brought another mic. Now we got 1, 2, 3, and a sock to solve any mic problems. Today, we're going to talk about how I finance the YouTube Flip with 0% down, and on top of that, we're going to answer some additional questions because Brian here is a lender. Brian, tell us about yourself.
I'm Brian Harris. I'm a lender here in Ventura, California. I have my own mortgage brokerage company, Harris Mortgage, known and worked with Kevin quite a while here, and it's great to be here.
Okay, Brian, the first question I have is, why would you lend me 100% on this deal?
That's a great question. When you say that, it makes me sound pretty foolish a bit. But let me tell you what. So I've worked with Kevin in the past. I've put him together with private lenders in the past. And if you came to me, those watching, and wanted to borrow 100% of purchase price, I would say absolutely not. But what you might do is start with 30% down, make your payments on time, maybe 5 days early, demonstrate that you can identify properties that have value, then maybe do it again with 20% down. And it's a relationship that's built because of that. Kevin was able to borrow 100% of value of this house and improve it and make some money on it.
So to add a little bit of detail, here's what we did. The house was sold for $482,000 when we bought it. We knew we were buying it as a good deal, but obviously day one, there was no extra value because it was still the fixer that it was. The extra value was really in putting work into the house. So really day one, you were taking that leap of faith that, oh my gosh, I hope Kevin makes the payments and pays me back. So what we actually did, because this is a flip, is we set up, rather than a conventional 30-year fixed style loan, we did an interest-only private money loan, which private money could theoretically close within 5 to 7 days, which essentially enabled us to say we were buying this house for cash. We went in without an appraisal contingency, without a loan contingency, and essentially Brian just wired the money over and we were able to close the deal and start the flip process. Brian, let's add a little bit of detail to that. What am I missing?
Well, that's a good synopsis. Private money deals are usually Plan B deals. So if you can get conventional financing, that's Plan A. So Plan B usually do private money because you have some sort of issue with assets, income, or the property. So in this case, there was some obvious termite damage, dry rot, maybe a little water damage. With this scenario, we're able to bypass that. This isn't Kevin's situation, but other people have a income issue. Maybe they're self-employed and they have great income in 2008, but to use self-employed income, you need to have that filed on your tax return. Other times this might come up is an asset situation. So we've had situations where people have stocks that maybe have appreciated quite a bit. They want to wait till they have that 12-month long-term capital gain. They don't want to sell them. So they might add a second and pay that second off once that 12 months has passed. So there's some situation that calls for private money solution.
So there are two ways you can get private money. You can get private money to finance an entire deal, which we did in this case, which would be your first and really only loan essentially on a property. Or you could get private money as a second against maybe a property that you already own to help you maybe finance something else. Maybe you don't want to sell off those stocks like you had mentioned because you'd have to pay capital gains on them. So you take out a secondary form of financing like private money, you make some repairs, and maybe you refinance down the road so you never had to touch that stock money or invested retirement income, something like that. Now in this case, as Brian mentioned, this house was a pretty good fixer-upper. So the odds of getting financing on this house, that is the odds of actually getting through an appraisal, where the appraiser's job is to look at the house and say, am I comfortable putting my name on this and my license on this as an appraiser to say, yeah, bank, you should feel comfortable lending on this when there's termite damage, water damage, and whatever else. The odds of this getting financing, relatively low. And even if we could get financing, we were competing against cash offers. So this was a way for us, when we didn't have $482,000 in cash available, to still come in as if we were a cash buyer. Now let's get into some more normal questions about lending that you might like to know about. Brian, what are some of the most common reasons people don't qualify for loans?
Okay, well, there's really three things we look at as lenders, and that's your income, assets, and credit. So unlike baseball, lending is a two strikes and you're out game. So if you are lacking one of those things, there's typically, not always, but typically a solution. But once you have two, then what we're going to do is probably give you some homework, things to work on to get to the point where you're buying and maybe continue to rent. Most common problems would be maybe a self-employed borrower who writes everything off. And because of that, we look at your net income and not your gross, and difficult to qualify. Assets are not typically a big problem because there's so many low down payment programs now for especially owner-occupied purchases. And third issue, credit. If you're under 620, 640, a lot of loan programs will no longer lend to you.
Well, Brian, these days it seems like being self-employed is all the rage. Everybody wants to be the entrepreneur, hustle, and be self-employed, get those tax deductions. But how does that hurt their ability to buy real estate? So they write everything off, but why does that matter compared to maybe somebody who's a W-2 employee? And which one has a better chance at investing more in real estate in the long run?
Well, as a self-employed individual myself, you have a goal of minimizing your taxes. Let's just say it out loud. So what most self-employed borrowers do is they write off everything they can in order to minimize their taxes. And that's a great thing to do until it comes time to get a loan. So as lenders, we look at your net income. And as a W-2 employee, we look at your gross income. So there's a serious haircut to the income you can use, especially for those who write off everything possible.
So just for clarity, a W-2 income borrower is really somebody who has a regular job. So you get paid hourly or you're on a salary. That enables you to generally qualify all of your income because you're not writing off so many business expenses. So generally, and I do this as a real estate broker as well, when people come in and make an offer on a house and they come in with a pre-approval letter, one of the first questions I do when I ask the lender is this a self-employed borrower, and is the income going up or is it going down?
No, it's a great question to ask, and it's very important. They also look very closely, underwriters look very closely at how your income's trending. And so that's another piece of the puzzle that's not a problem for a salaried employee.
Now, is it true that somebody who goes to college for, say, 4 years for engineering and then gets an engineering job for $80,000 a year right out of college can buy a house day one at their job?
That is correct. So underwriters will look at your work history. If you go to school and you get a job that's in line with your training, then that 4 years, 2 years, whatever the duration of your education was, counts as work history for you. You could borrow right away.
A big question that comes up all of the time is people want to know, how can I buy a house and then rent that out and at the same time buy another house to live in? That way they can take advantage of those first-time homebuyer loans. Buy the first one with 5 or 10% down, buy the next one with 5 or 10% down. Could you shed some light on how that works and clear up that confusion a little bit?
Absolutely, Kevin. When you buy a house as owner-occupied purchase, you could put 5%, 3%, 3.5%, just call it a low down payment option, get in a house. You need to buy the house with the intention of living in it. And when you come time to move up or just move over, you can rent the house you're vacating. You're buying again as an owner-occupied purchaser. You can put 3, 5, 3.5% down. You can use the rental income from the house you're vacating to help you qualify. You can get a lease signed and use 75% of that lease towards your usable income for your purchase.
That's perfect. So basically, just as long as I have a lease signed before I close on my second house on my first one, which could be dated maybe a month out from when I vacate the first one, I'm golden.
That's correct. I mean, it doesn't have to go bang bang. You just have to have a lease in place. It could be forward lease, and you can have plenty of time to move. But that lease needs to be signed, and you can use it.
Now, earlier you mentioned this person called an underwriter. A lot of people who have been through loans before hate that word and cringe at the word underwriter. Who is an underwriter, and why are they so mean to people?
I can't answer your second question. But so they are the gatekeeper. They work for the bank, and they make sure if we're getting a conventional loan that all the conventional guidelines are followed. If we're getting an FHA loan, that all the FHA guidelines are followed. Now, some of these guidelines are murky at best. Sadly, they're not all black and white. And so sometimes you'll get an underwriter who's friendly to you, and sometimes you'll get one who's not. So I believe you attract more flies with honey. I'm always nice to my underwriters, but they're not all created equally.
So it sounds like there's some discretion in what underwriters can do, but it also sounds like these are generally people who are maybe on salary that don't really care if the deal happens or not, so they're incentivized to protect the bank, whereas maybe you, who, and you maybe can clarify this, are on commission for getting that loan to close.
Yeah, so I like most mortgage brokers, loan officers, it's commission-based business. We're completely motivated to get these loans closed. A lot of times the underwriters aren't as eager to get it done.
So Brian, what happens then if a loan goes bad? Is it your fault? Is it the underwriter's fault? Does it matter? Does it affect you?
Wow, that's a good question. Well, I always think the buck stops here. It's the loan officer's responsibility to get a loan done. Now, one thing as a mortgage broker, what you can do is, and like I said, some of the guidelines are gray. If one underwriter doesn't like it, you can take it to another lender. If you feel like you have a case being made, get it approved somewhere else. So there's always that option.
Oh, so in other words, if one lender denies you upfront for a loan, you could switch lenders and maybe get a nicer underwriter, or even a lending platform or bank that isn't as stringent as maybe where you were originally.
So some lenders will have additional overlays, and that's additional restrictions that they and only they have. So in that case, it'd make a lot of sense to move it to a different lender if that issue that you're having has to do with a specific guideline that they have.
That's interesting. So if one lender says our maximum debt to income ratio is, say, 45%, which means you could spend up to 45% of your income on debts, including your housing and, say, car payment or whatever, is it then possible that another lender might lend you up to 47%, let's say?
Yes, that's true. So you can actually get an approval through DU, which is Fannie Mae's underwriting system, up to 49.99%. And often lenders will have a 45% overlay or a 43% overlay, where I work with lenders who, as long as you have an approval, they'll close the loan.
That's interesting. So an overlay is really something that says, look, Fannie Mae will buy this loan up to 49.99% debt to income, but some banks or whatever might want to be more conservative and say, no, we're not lending for more than 45% or over 47%.
Yeah, that's correct. So I think the fear is that they don't want to be stuck holding the loan should anything change. But that is true. These lenders, they'll have additional overlays. Try to work with the ones who don't.
Does that mean the bank that is making the original loan doesn't want to keep that loan? They don't want to collect that interest from you?
Some will, but what most often happens is once a loan is completed, then they will package them together and sell them, recoup their cash to then make more loans. Package them together, sell them. And they're not in the business of holding loans as much in the business of doing loans.
That sounds like it's the difference between making money on doing the loan, taking a loan fee, as opposed to making money by collecting the interest, which they pass along to whomever buys these loans in the future.
That's correct. And with Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac loans, there's such a available pool of buyers for those that they're very easy to sell, and oftentimes banks will sell those. When you get into the jumbo space, that's more unique. It's harder to sell those for banks. So it's more often you'll see them hold those loans. They're called portfolio loans, and they don't follow Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac guidelines, but they follow their own guidelines.
There's a lot of talk about conventional loans versus FHA loans, and people hear that and think, well, I want to be conventional. What's the difference between those?
So FHA loan is a government insured loan. A conventional loan is a private loan made by a bank. They're both great loans. They're great for first-time home buyers. You don't have to be a first-time home buyer. What I've found is that people with lower FICO scores have a lower payment with an FHA loan, where people with stronger, higher FICO scores have a better payment have a lower payment with conventional loans.
In effect, then, at the end, there's no difference necessarily to the buyer then, or is there any practical difference between a conventional and an FHA loan?
There's not a big difference. If you're putting less than 20% down, your loan's going to have mortgage insurance. If it's an FHA loan, the mortgage insurance is going to be government sponsored. If it's not, it's going to be private mortgage insurance. You may have heard PMI. They both have mortgage insurance. However, the FHA loan has mortgage insurance for the life of the loan, where the conventional loan will fall off once you have 20% equity based on your purchase price and normal payments.
Nice. So with a conventional loan, you can actually get rid of mortgage insurance, but with FHA, it stays forever. One thing that I advocate a lot on my channel is encouraging people to buy something, maybe a 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom, and then rent out another room. How does renting out rooms help people when maybe they go to qualify for another property, or does it even? In which case, that's also where the question comes up, you should always declare your rental income, but a lot of people take rental income from roommates as cash and don't declare it. So on the same note, is there sort of a downside to not declaring your roommate rental income?
So the standard guideline for Fannie Mae loans is that for a 1-unit property, you can't have what's called boarder's income. So you can have it, you just can't use it as usable income on a loan. So you can't use rental income on a 1-unit property to help you qualify for that property. But there's a program, it's called Home Ready. It's a subset of Fannie Mae, and they allow boarder's income to help you qualify. And yes, it needs to be reported to be used, but it's a nice niche program that allows you to use that extra income if you need it.
That's really interesting. So if you don't need the extra income, don't pay the IRS and take cash. No, don't do that. Pay the IRS what you owe them. No, you didn't see that either. But actually, in reality, that's really neat. So somebody who is constantly renting to roommates could, in theory, hop to another house and own more property long term by constantly being able to use roommate income by doing this Home Ready program.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It's a great niche program. A lot of people don't know about it. It's out there. I encourage you to, if needed, use it.
Sorry, the mic was dead for our IRS jokes, so you had to deal with the other mic. Oh well, let's keep going. Now we'll talk about grant programs. This comes up a lot for people that maybe have low to median income but still want to be homeowners and experience the benefits of home ownership. And maybe they don't have as much money necessarily to put down. Maybe they don't have the 3% to put down. Are there any programs for these folks?
There are a few. The best one that comes to mind is the Platinum program. With this, you can get up to 5% grant, goes towards your down payment or closing costs. You can pair it with a 3% down conventional loan or a 3.5% down FHA loan. So essentially, all your down payment, closing costs are covered. Also, what's nice, if you're a firefighter, police officer, a nurse, a few other occupations, the grant is really a gift. It's forgiven day one. Where if you're not one of those occupations, it's forgiven after 3 years. If you refinance, sell within 3 years, then you need to pay it back.
Is that a California-only product?
It actually is. So that is a California program.
So check with your local lenders, call them to find out what kind of grant programs exist. Just pick up the phone and go, what kind of grant programs you got? But let's talk a little bit about what normal requirements might be for a grant program loan. What kind of income or credit would we be looking at to be able to qualify for this?
So you typically need a 640 credit score, and you need to qualify based on income and a DTI ratio. Usually the restrictions are you can't make too much income. So it's a great program. They're trying to help people out. But if you're really doing well on your own, then, I guess they don't want to help you. So if you make too much income, you won't qualify. But in Ventura County, the income limit's quite high. It's $190,000 for this Platinum program. So I think, most people fit in.
That's incredible. I'm going to go buy a jet and then qualify for this Platinum program now. Let's write off every dime of income. A lot of folks that watch YouTube videos on real estate want to get into investing in real estate. What do you think the best way is for people to start investing in real estate?
I think the best way is to buy your first house, to get roommates if you need to, have your parents help you, get together with your friends, just get in the ownership game. And then, as we talked about earlier, you can move up, you can rent it, do it again.
What downsides would there be to taking out a 15-year loan over a 30-year loan? There are a lot of folks that advocate don't buy a house unless you can qualify for a 15-year loan. What are your thoughts on that as a lender?
I mean, in my experience, only old people do that.
All right, that answers that.
No, so you'll have a higher payment you need to make. If you try to rent a property later, you'll have a higher expense that you need to cover. I do run into people who are late 40s, 50s, 60s. They say, hey, I don't want to be paying for this mortgage when I'm, 75 years old. I want a 15-year fixed. It makes sense. But for anyone who's younger or who expects to do any type of investing post that purchase, I think a 30-year fix is just the best way to go.
Well, on that note, do they still do 40-year fixed?
They're out there. I don't do too many of them, but they're out there.
How do you get it?
Do I hear 50? I see that they're in the jumbo space is more often where I see a 40-year fixed, and I think it has to do with the payment being so large and the lenders getting creative with the guidelines and realizing, hey, this payment's going to be big. It's going to be hard for people to qualify for. So they allow you to stretch it out. People buying into jumbo space, you usually already have to have great credit. You have to have great income. So I think they're just taking an educated risk there. I don't see a 40-year, low balance conventional fixed available. Although if it does come out, I'll be the first to tell Kevin about it. He can tell all you guys.
So what are the absolute worst things somebody could do while they're in the process of buying a home or investment property or whatever, where you just want to pull your hair out because they just risked the deal bombing because of whatever it is they did?
Well, my favorite is if you're already at the highest debt to income ratio you possibly can get approved for, and then you go out and shop for furniture, and hey, we open this credit card, 0% interest, but it's really not 0% interest in the view of an underwriter. What happens is you need to add that liability to your liabilities. Your debt to income's too high, you no longer qualify. That's brutal, and that does happen. Yeah, bringing cash out to close, that's always tough. You need to source all your money. Another great one is Brian, I just quit my job.
Couldn't you wait until the loan closed?
One more week.
Like, I couldn't take another week.
I had someone switch jobs, and it just delayed the process. If you switch jobs, if it's in the same industry, I don't advise it. It doesn't kill the deal dead. It just adds layers, adds time, kind of pain in the butt.
I think that reminds me of when I was 19 years old and bought one of our first properties and accidentally paid for the appraisal out of my business account, but my deposit and all my money was coming from my personal account, which is really where it should have all come from. It caused some complexity.
That type of thing happens more than you would expect, and all funds need to be sourced. We want to make sure you're not getting sort of a hidden gift, and you're not getting any type of loan to get a loan. So we provide bank statements. Money needs to come from the accounts that we provided bank statements for.
Now, Brian, if I get another comment on my channel that tells me we're about to see 2008 over again, I'm going to vomit. Can you comment a little bit on why today is different? Oh, and that's a good one. This time's different. Why today is different, really, from 2008?
I agree with you. We're not in 2008. In 2008, there was, bakers getting loans saying they made $200,000, and they were believing that. So there's not stated income anymore. Owner-occupied transactions, because of Dodd-Frank, there's the ability to repay. You need to prove your ability to repay. And everybody who's getting loans today, owner-occupied loans, is qualifying based on credit, income and assets.
So what about those good old ninja loans? No job, no income, no assets? Come on, where are those, Brian? And the 40-year. I want both. Ninja 40-year.
Ninja 40-year, I think you're onto something.
Meet Kevin Financial.
No worries.
Yeah, there's none of that anymore. You need to completely qualify for your loans. Now, for investment properties, there's actually some creative financing options. For example, you can qualify based on the rental income of the property. So they don't look at the borrower's income at all. But I don't think it's like a crazy 2008 situation, because the rent from the property is servicing the loan that's being done. So they're usually not high loan to value loans. But in the investment property space, they're getting a little creative. Owner-occupied transactions are still very tough. I have a 3 to 6 inch stack of papers for every loan. They're all a bear. They're not easy. And anyone who says they are, they're wrong.
Well, it's good to hear that subprime lending is out of the picture for the time being, at least. That'll hopefully prevent any kind of large-scale, major meltdowns like we've seen in the past, whether it was savings and loans or 2008, savings and loan being a reference to 89, 88. Well, that's awesome, Brian. Do you have any final things you want to kind of throw out there? Things that maybe people don't know about, or, I don't know, lenders exposed? What do you got? What can we leave off with?
Well, I do want to thank Kevin for having me here. I've been watching all your shows, and I love watching every single one of them.
Oh no!
Always thumbs up.
I don't know who's giving you thumbs down anyway.
Grant Cardone's staff.
But no, look, I'm here in Ventura. I'm a local lender. I really care a lot about my borrowers, getting their offers accepted, getting them in great loans that they can comfortably pay. And you're not all here in Ventura. Wherever you are, find that local lender. And, I support the local lender, and I hope you are able to find that guy or gal in your town.
All right, thank you so much, Brian Harris with Harris Mortgage. Thank you again.